This episode is based on publicly available documents, filings, and statements. It represents analysis and commentary for informational purposes only. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Nothing in this episode should be interpreted as legal advice. All viewers are encouraged to review the source material directly. Count 3 is where the case stops being about forms, filings, and procedure, and starts being about motive. Because motive isn't loud. It doesn't show up in a headline. It shows up in timing, in reactions, in the choices people make when they think the moment benefits them. And in this case, the timing is impossible to ignore. When these events unfolded, Kelly wasn't just a public figure. She was a candidate, actively running, actively messaging, actively shaping a narrative she wanted voters to believe. And Count 3 asks the question no one wanted to say out loud. Were the actions taken against Reed the result of legitimate process, or the result of a political campaign looking for ammunition? This is Count 3. This is Delta Deep Dive. Now let's dive a little deeper. What Count 3 actually is. Count 3 is a Michigan common law malicious prosecution claim. It is one of the oldest torts recognized in the state, and it focuses on motive. Whether the prosecution was initiated for a purpose other than bringing an offender to justice. Under Matthews versus Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Michigan, 1998, the plaintiff must show 1. The defendants initiated or continued a criminal prosecution. 2. The prosecution ended in his favor. 3. There was no probable cause. 4. The defendants acted with malice or an improper purpose. Michigan courts define malice broadly. It does not require hatred. It does not require personal animosity. It simply requires a purpose other than justice. Political motive qualifies. Retaliatory motive qualifies. Campaign-related motive qualifies. Count 3 is about why the prosecution happened. How Count 2 and Count 3 differ? Both are malicious prosecution, but they protect different things. This is where most people get confused, so I'll break it down clearly. Count 2. Federal malicious prosecution, 4th Amendment. Focus, the seizure. Key case, Sykes versus Anderson, 6th Circuit, 2010. Count 2 asks, was it constitutional to take his liberty? It focuses on the arrest, the jail time, the bond restrictions, the months-long seizure of his liberty. Count 2 is also about the physical consequences of the prosecution. It's rooted in the 4th Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures. Count 3, Michigan malicious prosecution, common law. It focuses on the motive. The key case is Matthews, 1998. Count 3 asks, why did they do it? This is where the political context matters. Michigan's version of malicious prosecution is motive heavy. It cares deeply about intent, purpose, and improper use of the criminal process. Count 3 is where the complaint alleges Kelly was a candidate. Her campaign used the charges to attack Commissioner Moyle. She publicly announced the charges during a commission meeting that was in recess. The messaging worked. The prosecution was used as a political tool. Count 2, the seizure. Count 3, the intent. Both counts attack the same prosecution, but from two different legal angles. The complaint doesn't accuse anyone of political motive in a single sentence. It constructs the motive, methodically and deliberately, the way a prosecutor builds a timeline. Michigan malicious prosecution law requires malice, meaning a purpose other than justice. The complaint lays out that improper purpose in 4 layers. Layer 1, protecting conduct. The complaint begins by establishing that Reed's conduct was lawful. He was recording public officials. He was documenting public conduct. He was engaging in political speech. It cites McKay versus Federspiel. Right to record public officials. Ness versus City of Bloomington. Right to record for crime documentation. If the conduct was protected, then the motive for prosecuting him must lie elsewhere. Layer 2. Lack of probable cause. The complaint then lays out the absence of probable cause. The conduct was constitutionally protected. The stalking statute cannot criminalize protected recording. The prosecution proceeded anyway. Under Matthews, lack of probable cause allows the fact finder to infer malice. The complaint uses this principle strategically. If there is no legal basis, then the motive must have been something else. Layer 3. Political context. This is where the motive becomes visible. The complaint? Kelly was a candidate for office. The charges were used for her campaign. The messaging targeted Commissioner Moyle. The charges became political ammunition. Michigan courts treat political motive as classic malice. Cases like Fenestra and Moss versus Thomas confirm that ulterior motives, including political advantage, qualify. Layer 4. The public announcement. Then comes the most dramatic allegation. During a recess of a county commission meeting, in a government building, in front of officials and the public, Kelly stood up and announced the charges, not as a report, not as a procedural update, but as a candidate. This is the moment where the motive becomes undeniable and the complaint adds the final blow. It worked. The messaging spread, the narrative took hold, the charges became a weapon. Not against Reed, but against Moyle. Under Michigan law, that is the definition of malice. The narrative count 3 centers on motive, specifically whether the actions taken against the plaintiff were driven by retaliation tied to protected conduct. The plaintiff argues that once he engaged in protected activity, the treatment he received changed immediately, not gradually, not subtly. The shift was sharp, noticeable, and directly connected to the individuals who had expressed frustration or hostility toward him. And at the time these decisions were made, Kelly was still a candidate for office. That context matters. It adds pressure, scrutiny, and incentive. The kind that can turn ordinary disagreements into political opportunity. During this period, Kelly and her campaign team used the charges against Reed as political ammunition. They framed the accusations as a reflection on Commissioner Moyle, her political opponent. Then came the defining moment. The recess announcement. A candidate standing in a government building during a commission recess, publicly announcing charges that her campaign was actively using. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't restrained. It wasn't neutral. It was political theater, and it worked. The strength of the claim of count 3 is structurally strong for several reasons. 1, it had a favorable termination. A noli prosequi is a formal dismissal. Michigan courts treat this as a favorable termination. 2, lack of probable cause. If the conduct was protected under McKay and Ness, probable cause collapses. 3, political motive. As documented Michigan law treats political motive as classic malice. 4, the public announcement is powerful evidence. It shows intent, timing, purpose, benefit. 5, the strategy succeeded. Michigan law does not require the scheme to fail. It only requires that the scheme was not about justice. Success strengthens the inference of motive. The timeline is tight and traceable. Michigan courts look for patterns. The complaint lays it out. Protected conduct, immediate escalation, political use, public announcement, favorable termination. This is the exact sequence courts recognize as malicious prosecution. Count 3 asks the court to decide, were the actions taken against him influenced by campaign interests? Or was the prosecution a coincidence that just happened to benefit a candidate? If the plaintiff is correct, then the prosecution wasn't neutral. It was political. If the defense is correct, then the overlap between the legal case and the political messaging is coincidence, not coordination. Count 3 asks the court to determine which explanation aligns with the evidence. Count 3 is the moment where the case stops being about what happened on paper and starts being about why it happened at all. It forces the court to look past the charge, past the paperwork, past the official explanations, and into the motive behind the prosecution. Because in Michigan, malicious prosecution isn't just about the arrest. It's about the purpose. And when a prosecution becomes a political tool, when it becomes a campaign message, when it becomes a weapon used in a public meeting during a recess, the law calls that what it is: malice. This has been Delta Deep Dive. That was Count 3. Follow for more.